Hi everyone, it's Jen, and I'm here for another GameJam update. So today marks the end of week 7, going into week 8, the final full week of the jam. I believe the jam is ongoing until the end of June, but I plan to release the game beforehand. So this past week has been a super productive week, and I'm finally seeing all the finishing touches come together with my project, and it's the most cohesive vision that I've ever executed so far in my 41 years on this planet. So that part is super exciting. Did a opening animation for the title screen, which is this here, with these two characters, which would be the protagonist choices. This demo that I'm launching as of June 2021 only has the female protagonist Jo implemented due to the constraints of only having 2 months to work on this project. It was just too much to try to implement the secondary protagonist as well as the secondary vassal. So those are updates that are going to be things that I focus on after the jam to get that route up to speed with the rest of the game. I thought I would just take this moment to kind of talk a little bit about how I set up my files. I don't know if I've gone over this before in Anime Effects. It's really important when I'm setting up my files in Photoshop to organize them in groupings. It saves you a lot of time just finding what you're trying to animate. On these, I was kind of bad with these overlay layers here. I didn't label them, but you can see where knew I was going to get myself in trouble. I did label all the parts of the characters because I knew, see, here's their sideburns. I knew if I didn't label them, then I would have a heck of a time trying to find the pieces I was trying to animate. It's good to have them in these subdirectories, so that way if I just want to focus on her head, I can do that. Or any other, especially if I have like different eyes that swap out. Like I have an open eye that swaps out for like a closed eye here. I have those in one grouping, so that way, as well as the shadows, so that way if I have to move the position of her eyes, all the eyes will move together, so that way when I turn off the opacity on the eye placement, I don't have to try to line them up for them to match up again. So super important to group and label your assets for your animation, and that's why that probably takes me almost as long to prep my file for animation as it takes me to animate it. And I think that this is a good philosophy to use in all aspects of programming a game, is just to like organize your directories and organize your files, because this game is probably it is the best I've organized so far, and honestly looking back at my previous projects, there's like a giant headache trying to like figure out where certain scripts are, versus this game. I really tried to do my due diligence in organizing both the name file types and the directories appropriately, so finding the files that I need to correct certain bugs has actually been like pretty easy, and bug extermination has been pretty fast. So if I know it sounds like a really silly and kind of like straightforward kind of suggestion, even though I knew going into like making games that this was an important aspect of it, for whatever reason it still took me like 3 game projects to like get my naming conventions and my directories to like make sense to me. So like anything else, just practice. With practice comes better execution. So This is my my main screen here. You can see I have my overlays that I can all turn off at once with this grouping here for giving these kind of different lighting effects. And then I have my characters as separate directories here. And then I have a shadow, can kind of shadow and filter on the background, and then I have the background as a separate file. That's kind of what goes into animating them. So I spent 2 days, one day drawing and coloring this illustration, and then another day prepping it and animating it. Then I also made a special CG for I guess like the for one of the endings, where there is something kind of like a kiss. So this also took me 1 day to draw and color, and then 1 day to prep and animate. So this particular image I knew was gonna look pretty awkward if I tried to like give the illustration like too much motion. I feel like whenever you have intimate scenes or like very like you know, just like people interacting with each other, like touching each other, it can look very awkward with vector animation, and it's hard to get past that like that weird aesthetic of like looking like you're just like kind of smashing and sliding two drawings together. And I find even like watching anime, a lot of times like the kiss scene will be like this still frame, this dramatic still frame. So it's just one of those types of things that can look very awkward in general. So I knew that I didn't want to animate it too heavily, that I was going to mainly rely on this kind of like anime style, limited animation style of just having the characters remain mostly still and just having their hair kind of like blowing dramatically to give it kind of like motion and effect. So overall, I think, you know, that is not too cringy, I hope. You guys can let me know if it's cringy, and then I'll refrain from doing this kind of stuff in the future. But if you like it, let me know, and then I'll try to add more of these kind of CG cinematic moments to the game. In the first game, Soul Union, I tried to add some like animated scenes to it, or some like, I don't know, CG kind of scenes to it, but given that I had planned 4 vassals, even though they're not all implemented, I knew that like every time I planned a scene, it was going to be that times 4, and that was going to be a lot of work. In this game, there's only 2 vassal choices, and there's only 2 protagonists. So the sum of those combinations kind of ends up still being 4 illustrations. So it might still be like pretty ambitious to add more CGs than I did to like the first game, but I'm feeling more confident in my process, and the coloring technique that I'm using is a little more streamlined, something that I'm a little bit more comfortable with. This cell style coloring with just a little bit of like airbrushing and gradient to it, as opposed to like trying to do everything more blended. So I'm fairly confident that I can responsibly add these CGs with like character pairing equity. So we'll see by the time I get deeper into the game if I start getting fatigued. But those are my goals right now. I did also make a logo. I've tried some new things. The Soul Union game, I didn't really make a logo because it wasn't something that I was super interested in, and it's nothing that I felt like strongly or particularly good at. Typography and fonts, like as long as it's clean and it's readable, I tend to just kind of stick with what safely works. But in this case, since I was getting a little bit of help, and I figured, well, I'm running out of tasks to do, let's go ahead and try to make a logo. It gave me some practice in Illustrator, which I'm still not nearly as comfortable in Illustrator as I am in Photoshop. This is the logo. And I had kind of like a black and white background for it so I could make sure that it kind of showed up if I overlaid on both a light background and a dark background, even though I knew it would be mostly on top of darker backgrounds. But just in case the oddball situation where I was going to need it to be on a light background, I tried to keep that in mind as I was designing it. Nothing super spectacular, but I think it works, and it was my kind of first attempt at really trying to do a logo, so I thought that I give myself a pass. I think it's passable. If you guys think otherwise, let me know. I also made the itch website. So I like and appreciate how itch has just like this standard template that they kind of just have you use, because I am not a web designer. And again, like, this type of promotional stuff is stuff that I just don't enjoy doing. So I basically just follow their template, maybe use a different font. I think having a custom banner seems like minimal effort and kind of a necessity. And just screenshots, I try to find things that are a variety of different images that don't all look too samey, which is kind of difficult when it comes to visual novels, since so much of visual novels is very, like, by nature samey looking. It's hard to make like text look exciting. So I was fortunate enough that in this project I have quite a few like CGs and kind of little bit of non-standard visual novel elements to it that I could kind of try to like make my line of screenshots look a little bit more varied. And then because I do love having animation in my games, probably wouldn't be making games if I couldn't have animation in them, so I had to make a GIF to show that off. And the size limit for these files on itch is pretty small. I think it's like 3 megabytes or something like that. So this is like super heavily compressed, and I had to, you can kind of see the graininess, and I had to export it at like 10 frames a second as opposed to the 30 frames a second that I have most of my in-game animations at. But probably most people who are looking at it won't be too bothered by that. The effect I don't think is too bad. Here I have the character profiles, and much like my other websites, I don't really have any details down as far as like age, height, weight, blood type, zodiac sign. I don't really like to have those types of, I don't know, data displayed for the characters, because I would rather that the player can play the game and get to know the characters and form their own opinions and have as few, I guess, preconceived notions as possible, which I know is kind of different from what a lot of visual novel readers are probably used to, or maybe even looking for, since kind of tropes are so prevalent in visual novels. There are probably a good amount of visual novel readers who want to be told what tropes that their characters are kind of fit in, because they're looking for a certain type of protagonist or a certain type of love interest to pique their attention in order to even give that story a chance. And this is probably where I run into a lot of issues with trying to promote my work, is I have a really hard time condensing it to something that can say, you know, this is my game. If you're looking for this, then this particular type of thing, then come here. Because like I've said in some of my previous videos, I don't really make my games for a target demographic. I'm really just looking to share stories and experiences and journeys that are meaningful to me that I hope that somebody out there can relate to or can enjoy. So I don't know how you advertise that. I don't want to falsely advertise, to people. It's more important to me to be transparent and honest than it is for me to get clicks. So I don't really know how to put myself out there, and it always makes me feel kind of awkward because I know on one hand I have to put myself out there so that that small percentage of people who might connect with my story can find it, but at the same time I don't want to misrepresent it just to, I don't know, get found by some search algorithm. So I always just try to avoid it by not making promotional stuff. But this time around I challenged myself and I made a trailer, and I'm pretty proud of myself in the sense that I finally was able to kind of condense the purpose of my project in 4 sentences, which has always been super difficult for me. And I finally was able to kind of surmise my vision in 4 sentences. So that was pretty much a big deal for me. Well, that is all I pretty much have for this week, and I am looking forward to this final week, and I'm super excited to finally release my project. And thank you so much for joining me on this journey. We're almost there. We're so close to the finish line. We can see it. It's right in reach. Take care. Enjoy the process. Bye.